Hey guys, Matt here. If you've seen some of my previous videos, you might have realized that I tend to play games that can be used for more than just entertainment. Despite that aspect being very important, I like reviewing games that also give me the opportunity to start endlessly yapping about certain aspects of society. Whether it's about history, philosophy, politics or pop culture isn't really important. I just think it's worth noting that even in the most ridiculous video games, some useful messages could potentially still be hidden underneath the surface. And so all the way back in 2021, I made a video about how climate change is depicted in video games and what we could learn from that, which is how I came across an at that point unreleased game called Endling, Extinction Is Forever. And today I'm going to tell you how this predominantly simple game with a beautiful art style tried its very best to spread an important message on how pollution and human interference is one of the most concerning problems of the 21st century, while almost making a grown man sob like a little baby in the process as he finds himself getting way too attached to a cel-shaded fox and her adorable little cubs. Oh, and this video will contain only minor spoilers for the early game. Endling wastes no time in getting its message across, as it starts off with our main character, a fox, escaping a forest fire alongside many different other animals. Though it's not explicitly stated, the devastation of nature and suffering of wildlife in combination with all the human-made structures that stick out like a sore thumb all make it kind of obvious that this fire was caused by humans, and we as a species are definitely the bad guy here. As us Dutch people would say, we staan er weer mooi op jongens. This sequence functions as a tutorial for Endling's rather simplistic gameplay, which is basically a 2D side-scroller in a 3D environment. Movement is limited to running left and right on a set path, while the player is only able to change paths on very specific intersections. For now, that is enough to at least get to safety, where this mother fox is able to rest before giving birth to 4 cubs. Everything in this game is centered around keeping these cubs alive, most notably in how this game's story sees one of them being kidnapped and you trying to get it back. The remaining 3 cubs will accompany you in this search, but that means that finding food becomes one of your most important objectives. The bar in the left corner of the screen indicates how much time you still have left before you might lose one of them to starvation. Which sucks not only because it's fucking heartbreaking to see these little bastards suffer, but also because every single one of them has different abilities which throughout the game can be used to your advantage. At the start, something as simple as jumping isn't even possible, but as you'll progress towards your missing cub, the others will learn either collective skills like higher jumps, or specific individual skills like climbing, squeezing through narrow spaces, or disarming traps. The quote-unquote open world you will explore in this game will feel very recognizable to people who are familiar with so-called Metroidvanias, as you can explore these earlier mentioned set paths freely, but certain paths will only open up by progressing the story or unlocking set new abilities. This means searching through every nook and cranny, looking for events on your minimap, and backtracking a lot. Keep in mind that all of this takes place at nighttime, and you and your cubs have to return to your hiding place before the sun rises. Otherwise, the amount of humans present will grow, and your chances of survival shrink. So to summarize, the core gameplay loop consists of exploring this world and unlocking new abilities for your cubs, while keeping them fed and getting back to safety in time. Which is enjoyable enough, but definitely takes second place to the story, and most notably this game's wonderfully detailed environmental storytelling. Spanish developer Hero Beat Studios clearly put a lot of time into this world, and how, with each passing night, the environment basically changes for the worst. The starting area will at first still look like a pleasant winter landscape suitable for many different animals. But as it is being accompanied by a massive factory in the background, you can probably already guess where this is going. Throughout the first few days you can see how the humans will dump their waste into the nearby river and hunt the wildlife until there's basically nothing left. A feeling of dread will probably hit you the hardest as soon as you reach the game's forest. Richly filled with greenery and even inhabiting some friendly people here and there at first, lumberjacks will make sure that with each passing day, less and less trees will remain standing, even spelling a lot of trouble for the people that were just trying to live their lives there. This is, however, also the place where you can still find some positivity within all the hopelessness. As the daughter of the hunter that took your cub, a young girl named Molly will be one of the few people in this world that still remains friendly towards you. And in that sort of way, Endling does a great job of keeping the player a bit more optimistic by means of what could be considered random encounters. Listening to a woman singing songs while playing a guitar, cheering up Molly and receiving a hug for the trouble, light-hearted cutscenes where you can see your cubs growing up, and reuniting a young badger with his mother. But, especially if you're already a sensitive person, do not get used to these moments, because Endling is hellbent on making you realize that if humans don't change their ways as far as the environment goes, things will end badly. First for nature, then for the animals living in it, and eventually also for the humans themselves. The beautiful cel-shaded winter landscapes and green forests will steadily make way for factories, lumber mills and slaughterhouses. And when nearing the game's end credits, not much more than a barren wasteland will be left, where even then, the poacher who's been hunting you throughout the entire game still just won't let you be. Like honestly man, give these poor animals a fucking break. Without spoiling anything as far as this story goes, just know that the things depicted here are not for the faint of heart, and it genuinely will make you rethink some aspects of real life. I think the story and world alone already make Endling worth playing. But that is kind of ironic in my opinion, because actually playing the game will reveal the game's lesser aspects. It took me a little while to get into Endling's gameplay loop. Nights seemed to go by way too quickly while my cubs were just constantly complaining about being hungry. The game's story is told through picking up scents, which leads you to clues regarding your missing cub. But in the first few nights, when everything is still new to you, you'll probably be treading way too carefully while also constantly feeding your cubs, and there will be no time left to actually follow these leads. This will get better when your cubs grow bigger and don't require food as often, as well as that more opportunities to get food will open up. But then it almost feels like the game makes a 180-degree turn and becomes too easy. Firstly, by realizing that when the sun comes up, it really doesn't get that much more difficult to get back to your hiding spot. Sure, there are more humans around, but it just really isn't that difficult to avoid them. Food is no longer a problem since there's more than enough of it now. Of course, you'll also become more and more familiar with the map, and now that you have all the time in the world to follow the earlier mentioned leads, you'll suddenly start flying through this story. Which in and of itself is basically only told to you by still frames of things that happened before. Long story short, this resulted in me easily finishing the game with all 3 and of course eventually 4 cubs still alive, with no moment of doubt as to whether or not they would survive at all. Maybe this differs heavily between players. I've already seen other people online struggling with this aspect a bit more. But to me, the lack of difficulty in the late game completely contradicted the pretty brutal message the game was trying to get across. When eventually reaching the end credits, I did realize that I hadn't unlocked all the cub skills yet, as well as all the achievements. So there is still some incentive to replay this game. But since the game leans so heavily on its story and I already finished it with everyone still alive, I do feel like this is the least impressive aspect of the game. In conclusion, I think that Endling is an important game simply because it portrays a seriously concerning aspect of real life that definitely shouldn't be swept under the rug. And it does really do this in an effective way. Seeing how the environment changes over the course of these 30 nights, seeing what sort of impact these people have on it, and just watching your main character and her cubs suffer through all of this alongside many other animals and the more well-meaning humans. Yeah, it's a pretty heartbreaking image. All packaged in a beautiful hand-drawn cel-shaded art style. It almost contradicts the horrible situation you find yourself in, but I can only commend the hard work these developers put into it. But where I have no doubt that you will be swept off your feet and punched in your gut by this game's art style, emotional impact and world building, gameplay feels like it took second place here. And in that regard, this is almost more of an interactive story than it is a full-fledged video game. Endling's gameplay goes from strangely confusing at first to almost obnoxiously easy in the end, and I had no trouble avoiding the game's supposedly biggest challenges. And because there was a notable lack of challenge, it can feel a bit underwhelming to reach those inevitable end credits in about 4 to 5 hours with everyone still alive. Especially when you realize that across the board, this game will set you back around 25 to 30 euros. That is just not a lot of gameplay and playtime for that price. I'm hesitant to recommend this game to people, not because I think it isn't worth it, but mostly because I think that this is a game for a very specific audience. And many people outside of that audience will very likely be disappointed by what's on offer here gameplay-wise. Which is a serious shame, since Endling Extinction Is Forever has a message that should reach as many people as possible. So let me end this video not just by saying that Endling is a wonderful little game with an important message, but also by saying that, without trying to force anything onto you, please don't get me wrong, simply just think about the things portrayed in this game. No one has to drastically change their lifestyle in order to not end up where Endling ended up. Especially not because some random Dutch guy who reviews video games told you to. But small things like cleaning up after yourself, eating a little less meat here and there, placing a hedgehog or insect hotel in your garden, or shower just a little less long, are minuscule little steps to take in order to make sure that our world doesn't eventually end up looking like this. Thanks for watching. As always, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Like and subscribe if you did, and let me know your opinion in the comments as well. Also, do you think Endling got its message across in an effective way, or could the developers have done a better job in your opinion? I'd love to know what other people think of this game and the discussion surrounding the environment. But for now, thanks a lot again, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!
Yeah.